this could be the very revelation of the fact that we do not truly have a personal relationship with God.
I get so diluted with myself, I get so off base, and I really need people to correct me where I'm wrong.
Vices keep us from forward progress and from truly being instruments of grace for this world.
And this is a great test right here as to whether or not we idolize our ideas, is when the critic comes in and criticizes us.
I mean, I do think Christians should have a much higher standard than the world in the way that we use language.
We are not to bow down to the opinions of men, but we are still to love them.
It's so much easier to argue in that way. It doesn't really matter if I'm converting them, as long as I'm winning.
So what I did is I turned to her, I said, I might just be the one person who actually cares for your heart and wants your soul saved.
I tell you what, we love coming out with these episodes every single week, and I hope that you do as well. I want to ask you to hit that like and subscribe button. It's going to help us out a lot. It helps this channel reach more men. It helps these audio podcasts reach more men. In addition, I want to hear from you. If you have show ideas, things you would like us to discuss, people you'd like us to interview, send them to us at podcast@catholicgentleman.com or leave that note in the comment sections. We'll be reviewing those, and we will be coming out with better and better episodes just for you. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Now on to the show. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here on another episode of The Catholic Gentleman. If you're watching us on YouTube or checking us out on Spotify video, you already know that we've got a guest here in-house, and we couldn't be more grateful for Timothy Flanders. Who are we? We're your hosts. I'm John Heinen. We've also got my close friend, Executive Director of the Father St. Joseph, Devin Shaw. Devin, how are you doing? We are not at Easter yet. We're still closing Lent at the recording. How are you doing as you wind up your Lent?
It's like, when you're running that marathon or that, long race, it's like you got to save that energy for the end so you can pour it on, right? That's what we need to be doing right now, is pouring on the love for our Lord.
Amen. And pray that it might carry with us through Easter. And so
and
please
beyond.
Keep us all in your prayers and beyond. Exactly. So awesome. Well, Timothy, what a blessing it is to have you join us today. I actually knew of you before I ever got to meet you through The Meaning of Catholic. I remember coming to that website frequently, I guess 2019, 2020, somewhere around there, and being like, man, this is really solid stuff. Oh, this is, man, I wish I could articulate things like this. And so with that being said, we're going to be talking about pride. No, I'm just so grateful for all that you've done. You were Protestant, you're Eastern Orthodox, you're Catholic. You've been evangelizing in the internet space. You've also been fighting with truth, for the sake of Christ, his kingdom, for the church, for Holy Mother Church. Now you're launching a new platform you just did on the feast day of Our Lady of Victory, Pelican Plus. I'm anyway, so grateful for your work, but what got you to dive into the digital space? Let's start there.
First of all, it's a great honor to be on this podcast. I'm a huge fan of both of you. Great work that y'all do. So just thankful to be here. What made me dive into the digital space? It was 2018, what we call the Summer of Shame, when the McCarrick scandals were broke.
Yes.
And I kind of just started to, I'd taken a break from the internet because I got married, and I just wanted to live in reality and spend more time with the real life of things, wife and children, doing what I need to do. But I just I noticed on Facebook and certain places that I was still part of, that there was just a lot of anger or frustration, or God forbid, there was actually people like doubting their faith in the Roman Catholic dogmas, wanting to leave the church and become Eastern Orthodox or some other thing. And I had already kind of, I'd gone through a great deal of other options, including what, in my opinion, is the best other option, the most deceptive apologetic against the Roman Catholic dogmas, that is Eastern Orthodoxy.
Yes.
I had been Eastern Orthodox for 3 years as a communicant, and I was just kind of saying, hey guys, it's like the grass is actually not greener, trust me. And it's not, don't lose your faith or anything. So I just started talking on the internet a lot more. And then in 2019, I launched the Meaning of Catholic Lay Apostolate, which was just primarily just designed to say, hey, if you guys just read these 6 books, 95% of all this confusion will just evaporate because the Catholic Church has just sort of brought it out for us, and that's the glory and the great good of being Catholic. So I just started doing that and just writing, and I felt a calling to do this, but I've had a lot of struggles with it because the internet's just a dark place
Amen.
among Christians. So that's the short answer.
Yeah, wow. Well, you've definitely come a long way, and I guess what really inspired me for this conversation was all the work that you've done in the internet, the internal wrestling that you've had with the internet, and the fact that you're still active and involved in it, just like we are. Because we have individuals like Peter, your partner in Pelican Plus, and all these where they do digital fasts, right? Like they're just done for Lent. And we all, Devin had a YouTube channel, and then he decided to just, close it down because of all of this. And I get it very much. And so what are you noticing that is being done to men in this digital space that's kind of changing them, maybe something that they're not aware of or they can't see? And why is it important for us to be here to bring truth?
Yeah, I think that the struggle of man is like what Devin talks about in his ministry, embrace the woman, and the perfection of manhood is fatherhood. And like kind of coming into your own as a man is seeking out the lost part of your heart, that when God created woman, he took part of Adam's chest, his heart, and made the woman. And so a man leaves his father and his mother, this whole sort of perfection of manhood. And for a priest or monk, you're getting married to the church. There's still that same reality in a more mystical sense is happening. But it's very much coming in contact with the reality of woman, the reality of the world is the perfection of manhood. Yeah. And for men, I think that we can get stuck in our head. This is true for me, first and foremost. We get very stuck in our intellects and our ideas and our abstractions. And we're totally disconnected from our own hearts and the reality of our hearts in front of us and the reality. So what does the internet do? The internet creates a disembodied virtual reality is what it is. It's a disembodied virtual reality that relies on man-made light. And this is important because light actually has a very intense psychological effect on everyone. And so I think that this is very, very important to discuss because you get dopamine, you get serotonin or whatever, just from the light itself, looking at your light on your phone. It's a man-made light, so it literally obscures the God-created lights of, the sunrise, but also more importantly, the God-created light that is metaphysical in the dignity of each human person. And so the way that I act with the grocery store clerk is going to be different than the way I act again with comments online because it's disembodied. Yes. I'm not actually literally experiencing in my body the metaphysical light of the dignity of this human person because it's now obscured through this man-made light on my phone. So I think that it's difficult to overestimate the damage done to men when we set aside the basics of pornography, which is obvious, that's obviously evil. Right. But then we look at just this basic stuff. Like I think it was one of y'all, I can't remember, we were thinking like, I really think that a man should not really be on social media unless they're called to be. That should be the ordinary default is like, I'm not on social media unless I feel like I'm called to be there. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, Devin, I know you have something great to say, I'm sure. I just wanted to affirm that. I've actually never reflected on the light comparison. It couldn't be more accurate. And I just want to say it happened recently. We launched an episode yesterday, Devin and I, about making marriageable men or men becoming marriageable. And I had this gentleman who talked about marriage as sort of like a cost-benefit analysis, and that men need to take that into consideration, right? Just completely missing the point of marriage. And I responded to him and was really proud of my response. And no, I mean this seriously. I read it this morning. I reread it this morning, my response. And I was like, you know what? I can't actually speak like that in person that quickly. But when I'm behind a computer screen, I have the ability to wrestle through my thoughts. I edited it like 4 or 5 times, and then I posted it. And there was a value for this gentleman, but also for people who are reading it. But at the same time, how much different would it be? Because he just responded. He said, "Thank you for your lengthy and thoughtful response. I'm 32 years old, not married, and very happy." And I was like, okay. And I made it, still wrong. But to your point, though, what the internet does to us is it just removes us from reality, like you were just saying. And I'm so grateful for that comment. Devin, why don't you...
Well, first of all, I love the idea of the disembodied virtual reality.
Yes.
That is so good, because like John Paul II in his Theology of the Body, he talks about how the body expresses the reality of the person, right? And so have you ever had this experience where, and this is why I think the online dating thing, we've talked about this, is so skewed, is because you're looking at stats and pixels. But then when you meet a person in person, that person who looked a certain way on the internet, when you meet them in person, you're like, man, this person is attractive. Why? Because there is a light, as you say, that light of the human person, that light that's coming through their flesh. That is the light of Christ also through their baptism, that makes them so much more attractive. And we're missing this whole thing. But I think it's so easy, like as you're saying, to sit behind our barricades of screens and copper wires and satellites feeds and be able to throw out these bombs and this ammunition at people and feel safe. Like, man, it doesn't come back to haunt me, kind of thing. And so I love this, but I'd love to hear more about your struggle with that and why it was so intense for you, because I think that lets us all dive in and say, yeah, I can relate, because I've had my own problems with, being online, social media, but I'd love to hear more. If that's all right, I'd just love to hear more about the intensity of the struggle, why it was so intense, and really how you broke free. And what that means now, and what your life looks like, your mental space, your soul space looks like now compared to then.
Sure. Well, first of all, the disembodied community that came from Marshall McLuhan. So don't give me credit for that. He predicted
so
the
humble.
internet. Yeah, I mean, he predicted some kind of thing like the internet in the 1960s, and so he was talking, I think, all about these issues. And this is why we created Pelican Plus, to have a digital space where we are using the internet for the things that are good about the internet, where I can get connected. Like I have somebody on Pelican Plus community, he lives in Sweden and he just has no community, just because whatever circumstances brought him to Sweden, and now he just has no community. He drives like an hour to get to Mass. So this is the only connection he has with other Catholics for whatever reason. So hey, that's great. I'm so glad that we can make that connection, and that's cool to do that. But as for me, how did I get free? I mean, I'm not free, first of all, still struggling through it. But I actually, it was a very spiritual experience that I had, that I write about at OnePeterFive. I have a series of 5 articles called My Struggle as the editor of OnePeterFive. And it really came through Our Lady of Sorrows. It's providential that today we're recording this on the traditional feast day of Our Lady of Sorrows. So I'm happy to be honoring her sorrows in this. There's a mystical doctrine from Revelation 12 that discusses the birth pains of Our Lady, because we know that Our Lady had no birth pains when she birthed Christ, but she had birth pains when she gave birth to the church through the cross. When she was at the cross, these were her pains and her sorrows. So just a short answer, Devin, I prayed the chaplet of Our Lady of Sorrows it was on Holy Monday last year, and I just had this immense grace of self-knowledge. This is something that Our Lady of Sorrows gives to people because of the prophecy of Simeon, who says, a sword shall pierce your own soul too, that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed. So Our Lady of Sorrows reveals your heart to you, and it was true in my case. And what she revealed to me was that I was creating idols out of my own ideas, because the term idol in Greek means idea. This is what they believe, that you have an idea and you put it in your brain, and that's an idol, and it's the same word for an actual idol, idolatry. And so it's not to say that ideas are wrong per se, but you can get attached to your own ideas. And then I read this passage from St. John Climacus, and where he says that if you get attached to your own opinions, and you're so attached to your own opinions that when you're having a conversation, all you're trying to do is just prove your own opinion, even if your opinion is true. He says that you're sick with the devil's disease. And it was like, whoa. I mean, the demons believe in God and tremble. So the demons aren't heretics. Like they're not, they don't have any wrong opinions. Like they don't have any illusions about God. Like they're not heretics. And yet they're demons. So it's like this very subtle thing, because for me, I was like, I'm getting my paycheck and feeding my family by putting my opinion out there, and I basically just realized I'm getting attached to my own opinion so much, even if what I'm saying is true, and I'm sick with the devil's disease. So this importance, so it just illustrates the intense importance of the fact that God is charity. He who loveth not knoweth not God, because God is charity. And so we have to have this really, really deep commitment to charity on the internet, or we will just get sick with the devil's disease.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And so, Timothy, thank you for your wisdom and for bringing that to light, because I think for the majority of men, and actually let's bring it down there, the majority of men aren't running apostolates online. They're not, but they're completely present, right? They're falling into the comment boxes. They are, voicing their opinions, or even internally, maybe they're not externally going out there, but internally they're gravitating and grabbing their opinions and getting trapped and addicted to this. And you said something in that same article. You said that you framed the internet not just as a distraction, but also as a theater of demonic operations. And so I actually want to go in a little bit further into that. And I want to hear from you, how do you feel beyond what we've just discussed, that through social media and all this stuff, that men are getting trapped, yes, in pride internally, but also through demonic influence in the digital space?
Well, I don't even know. I mean, I know that Lucifer his name means the light bearer.
There it is.
And so this is why Marshall McLuhan said, he not only predicted the internet, he said, this is literally the infrastructure for the Antichrist, because it creates a disembodied community. Because like Fulton Sheen talks about the mystical body of the Antichrist, the mystical body of Satan, because Satan is just trying to create something that is a counter church, a counter reality. And he's already created it with the internet. So what is the demonic reality? I mean, it's hard to overestimate it, I think. But when we think about it, I mean, part of this started when I just noticed that I pray that Benedict in office. Benedict in office always starts with Psalm 66, which is, God be merciful unto us and bless us. The Lord show us the light of his face upon us. So like when the sun is rising, you're asking the Lord for the light of his face. And I just noticed that when I have when I have my normal light bulbs on, I actually can't see the sunrise. And it's just like, oh, that's annoying. So I just turn them off. And then I'm like, wait a second, if I use a candle, you actually can have a candle and you can see the sunrise at the same time. It's like, that's just so weird how it obscures the light of the sun. And this is where I started to see the effect of light. And there was an article at New Polity, like last year, that was called Light Pollution as Antichrist. Kind of an intense title, right? But then I was like, oh, I feel like there's something to this actually, because when you're out in you're camping out in some rural area, you see the stars. I mean, it's just glorious. I mean, this is like, how can you be an atheist? But then you can be an atheist if you live in a city and you never see the stars, because it's just all this, these light bulbs obscuring the light of God's glory. So, and we know that angels are beings of light. This is kind of like the thing that God created. Light. God created light, right? But light is also a symbol for a spiritual reality of angels. So I don't even know all of the depth of the demons and what they're doing. I just can see the effects of the light and the false light of Lucifer in these systems. And all the danger. And I know all these things. Like Facebook, the co-founder, I can't remember his name, he said, "Oh, we just discovered this weakness in human psychology that if we
Yes.
get them to do these likes, then they get a dopamine burst and then they get literally addicted to this." So all of these systems, all of these AIs and technology, they're all based on addicting souls to their system, to their false light, so that they can make money. That's the whole purpose. Everybody knows that. But this is why it's unfortunate. Like Catholics we're still trying to you're trying to swim up this stream and get trending enough so that we can make our own money. And this is why, again, we made Pelican Plus. We're like, let's make a whole system where all the technological, everything, the money and everything is totally Catholic from top to bottom. It has nothing to do with, it's totally Catholic social teaching. It's not based on, you clicked on this one thing, so therefore the algorithm's going to give you something else. Or you wanted to investigate this one topic that the algorithm doesn't like, the algorithm beast, shall we say.
Correct.
Everybody's got to get this mark of the beast for the algorithm to play in the sand with this whole beast of a system. And it's like, let's be done with this, guys. So I don't know if that gets to what you're
no wonder it's called the feed, when we're talking about
the feed,
our Facebook and Twitter and X and all of that sort of stuff. Twitter, will I ever say X first? It is so much to reflect on, and I just say again, it's important for men to dialogue about these things and to enter into them. And so, Devin.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things here that are so valuable that you're bringing to the table. First of all, you said that it was self-knowledge that led you to this place. And I think that's so important because Thomas Aquinas, Teresa of Avila, basically all the great saints say really the first step in knowing God is knowing yourself, self-knowledge. And so knowledge of self actually because if you really truly know yourself, what is Saint Therese says, humilitas est veritas. So humility is truth, the truth of oneself and the truth of God. So if I am truly who I truly am, then I'm going to have that knowledge of myself, which allows me then to humbly put myself in the presence of God, and God then becomes knowable to me, because God doesn't really reveal himself to people who don't know themselves because they're stuck in their own satanic darkness. So I think that's very important. Like the first step for all of us in this is because I think people can hear this and be like, hey, what's the difference between Pelican and the Catholic Gentleman and say Diary of a CEO or Joe Rogan? I mean, you guys are all on the internet. You guys all got your podcasts. Guys all have your platforms. There virtually is no difference, right? So that would be, I think that would be, I guess, a good argument against what we're talking about here. However, I think at the same time, what we're saying, and I'd love to hear your opinion just on that. Maybe we just stop right there. What's the answer to that? And then I would love to move on to another point about the light. But yeah, what's our answer or our response to, look, you guys are just like everyone else. You guys are on the internet. Big deal. You say you're doing it because you're humble or whatever. Come on, give me the truth here. So what do you guys think about that?
We just want to make a lot of money. No,
I mean, yeah. I'm just a grifter. It's hilarious when people say that. It's like, wow, you really think I'm like a millionaire out of this? I was just appealing for money last summer. Please,
I know.
Anyways, number one, I think I mentioned before, number one, I feel like men should just not be on the internet, or at least not be on social media, just as a default. Like Devin, you say in your work, after 5 p.m., you put your phone down and you just check into reality with your wife and kids, and you do not bring that phone up again until after your morning prayers the next morning. That should be the default. And then if you feel called to be a part of all this social media algorithm beast, to try to bring the true light into the false light, then okay, great. Well, you need to discern that, and that needs to be a particular calling for you. And then, for me, The only reason I'm doing this is because I do feel called. I do feel called that, and it happened because I was reading. I was like, I know that my predominant fault is pride. I know I have all these problems. So what I really wanted to do was run away from the internet, because I was like, I just want to like work in an office, do my thing. Because I did that for the first 6 or 7 years of my Catholic life, and it was like, oh, this is great. And then, but I was reading the book Humility of Heart by Bergamo. And that's, you know, that one, it's like, I think it's,
I love it.
Yeah. The greatest, probably the greatest treatise, I think, on humility. And then there's a line in there that convicted me. And the line was, if you do have the talent or ability to teach others, but you refuse to do that because you are, trying to not be prideful, then you're a coward. That's just cowardice. And I realized it's like, even though this space is perilous because I don't want to fall into pride, I realized, well, humility is truth. So like, I know that I can teach others. I know I can do that, not because I'm great, because God gave me a gift to do that. Okay, I can do that. So then if I don't actually do it, I'm taking the talent and I'm hiding it in the sand. And then Jesus will say to me, thou wicked servant. So I just have to do what I'm doing. I feel called to it. And so I'm trying to do my best with what I have.
Yeah, so I think this is awesome because you really demonstrate the vice virtue thing. I believe that the devil lives in the extremes. He's always pushing us out away from virtue, which is in the middle, toward polar extremes, which is vice. And there's all sorts of levels of vice on the way out to the extremism. But like you're saying, on one hand, we are so tempted to flee from the battle, because we're like, man, I don't want to get mixed up in that, because I could sin, I could fall, and I could be susceptible to pride and presumption, and I'd make mistakes. On the other hand, I could be so front-facing that I make it all about me. And I think this is the real danger that we're facing right now is, yes, we've got people who flee, but then we have people who are so front-facing that is about me. And when you talk about the light, I love it. Like St. Augustine said something along these lines when they went to St. John the Baptist, and they're like, Are you the prophet? No. Are you the Christ? No. And so basically Augustine says he is the lamp that points or directs toward the light. He's a creature that points toward the Creator. He is, in a sense, a Christian who points toward Christ. This is the problem I'm seeing everywhere, is that we're not pointing toward Christ. We're pointing toward ourselves. So there are two types of men. There are those who use God to glorify themselves, and those who use themselves to glorify God. And I think that this is, I'm just telling you, I've been guilty of this. This is what really crushed me years ago. I was so convicted by God that I was usurping his glory, even though I wasn't obtaining any real glory. But like if our motivation is even to have a sliver of God's glory for ourselves, reserving something for ourselves, we have failed. So all this outward facing in the name of Jesus Christ, as if my motivational factor, my interior life gives my exterior life form. If I am facing out and my motivation is just so that I can be more popular or have more fans, have more followers, beat the algorithm, whatever that is, that's all false. That's the false light. I am now making myself the light, and I'm expecting Christ to be the lamp that points everyone to me. Whereas, like what you're saying, the motivation behind what you, John, do, what you, Tim, do, is I am a little lamp. I'm that candle. I'm not a light that obscures the sun. I'm a little candle that says, hey, I'm a vigil light. Christ is present here.
And I just want to say that this is great. I love what you said. The entire technological structure of big tech rewards everyone who glorifies themselves. That's the entire technological structure. So we have like good Catholics like y'all or like other people who are doing good work, and they're trying, we're all in this technological structure, and we're trying to be this lamp to light towards the true light. But we're fighting against this whole technological structure, which is designed against us.
So, yes. Yeah, this is so good because the scriptures time and time again, especially in the Old Testament and the Psalms, I think it's even the prophet Isaiah talks about what is the guilt of God's people? What is it that God indicts them for? They adored the work of their own hands. This is what we do all the time. We make a thumbnail, we adore it, especially if it's got the image of our face on it, our descriptions, we now that ChatGPT does it all for us, we adore it, we go online and we check out our page and we're looking at we adore it. We adore the work of our hands. And how you worship the work of your hands is when you keep returning to it like the dog returns to its vomit. You keep going out there to look at the work of your own hands. You could be spending, like St. John of the Cross, I love it, in the Spiritual Canticle, I think he says in article number 29, and I'm going to butcher it, but he basically says, for all their banging and clamoring, he's talking about evangelists, right? For all their hammering and banging and clamoring, if they would just spend half of that time in prayer with one good work, just one, they would do far more good for themselves, for the church, and a lot less damage. The problem is that we're spending all our time adoring the work of our hands, creating our works of our hands, adoring the work of our hands, and we've forgotten how to adore Christ.
That's true. So, Timothy, you had to give yourself some guardrails in this battle that we're all in, and everything you guys are saying is 100% what I experience, right? I do novenas frequently to Our Lady about whether we need to stop the Catholic gentleman, right? Like, are we doing good? Are we doing, the opposite? Are we serving God? Are we serving ourselves? And you have to remove YouTube Studio from your phone, right? So that you're not, again, being addicted to these affirming outcomes that come across us in likes and subscribes and view counts. And so, but even more than that, you put together these promises that you, thought through, prayed through, and decided, you know what, I'm going to publicly present these. I thought they were so good. They're so good. They're things that our mutual friend Jordan Burke, came out with that video on being silent not too long ago, and it was so good and it was so well done. It was all about Scripture, and so it was just entering into that when I read these promises, and I was so grateful for the time that you spent into it. And so I'd love to start and talk about really that first one, your guardrails. Maybe we'll stop right there. Maybe you tell us why you decided to create this internet promise before we dive into it.
The reason I became my academic background was that I was doing a master's program with the Catholic University of Ukraine online, and it was about ecumenical studies. Now, ecumenical studies gets a bad name because there's bad ecumenism, but there is actually good ecumenism, which is where we're struggling with the reality that there was World War II and a bunch of baptized Christians killed each other in the name of these petty idols. And so I was struggling with the reality of the unity of the church. How can there be unity in the church? And eventually I realized that the only way to have unity is to be Catholic. So long story short. But so I was always living.
Glad you cleared that up for us.
Yeah. There's a good clip right there. We will utilize that.
But Internet Promise came as a fruit of the reality of communion, the Holy Communion. When I was a Protestant, my Catholic friend brought me to a mass, and during the sermon, the priest talked about the reality of the Eucharist, and he said that in the Holy Sacrament we unite with our Lord Jesus Christ, who is reigning in heaven, and thereby we also unite with everyone who is present at the Mass as well. We also, because there's only one body of Christ, we unite with everyone present in the whole Catholic Church right now, but we also unite with all the church suffering and in triumph too. So we're uniting with all of our forefathers as well. So this immense reality of unity in truth and unity. And I was thinking about the verse from St. Paul when he says doing the truth in charity, and in the Greek it actually says he uses truth as a verb, truthing in charity. And it seems to me that, and I also, it was my own personal journey to the Catholic faith had so much to do with, okay, I'm wrong. I need to just realize I'm wrong. Or I encountered this person, and this person said I was wrong, and he actually proved it. And I was like, I just had to admit that I'm wrong. So I kind of like kept on encountering these new people. So I realized like the only way that I came in contact with the truth was by God dragging me kicking and screaming out of a prideful state and an uncharitable state, where I could actually make contact with other human beings who could challenge my viewpoint. So all of this is my background. And then all these, Catholics on the internet, I see them either doubting their faith or they're just bitterly fighting each other. I'm like, guys, like, man, why are you guys hating each other so much? And then this is just totally contrary to all these potent verses from the divine scriptures. And so that's according to the origin of the internet promise from the Meaning of Catholic, where I was trying to say, this is the only way for me to use the internet without sinning. So that was the origin of it.
Yeah.
So what are the promises that you made to yourself so that the viewers and us, we can clearly have those? Because I think those guardrails are going to help us, because we can perhaps apply them to our life as well.
Yeah, well, the most important verse there's like, I don't know it by heart, actually. I'll pull it up in a minute. But the main verse is, every empty word that men shall say, they will give an answer on the judgment day.
Yeah, exactly.
So the words I'm saying right now, our Lord Jesus Christ says that we will have to make an answer for what we say. So that's a very fearful verse that it says, my colleague Kennedy Hall will say, wake up and smell the sulfur situation. So, it starts as, and in St. Benedict in his rule, we talked about humility begins with the fear of hell. Like, you have to be afraid of hell so that you can at least start to be converted, and then eventually you'll have, you can enter into a much more pure contrition. But that's the foundational verse right there. But another verse is, he who says he loves God, 1 John 4:20. He who says he loves God but hates his brother is a liar, because how can you say you love God whom you do not see, but you cannot love your brother whom you do see?
Yeah. Let's actually, I want to hear the rest of them, but let's pause right there and talk about it coming out in the digital space, because my concern is that if we go through all of these, people are going to miss the reality of how this comes to life in the digital world, and how important this is for us to be aware. Let's just start with those two scripture verses that you did. Every idle word that men shall speak, they shall render an account for it on the day of judgment. Every idle word, how does this come about in comm boxes, et cetera? I'd love to just dialogue a little bit into that, if that's all right.
Sure. Let me just first of all say, I have said so many words on the internet where somebody said something on the internet which I thought was wrong. And maybe I was even right. Like I said, like, somebody said something on the internet, they posted on a Facebook status and they said XYZ. And I was like, oh, that person's wrong. And maybe they were actually wrong. But I was so excited to own that person, so to speak.
Yes.
Beat them with the truth, whip them with the truth, that I just furiously wrote down all these things. And I was very satisfied with myself after that. And then I just started to check back. Has he responded yet? And then he's responded. And then he had a big argument. Oh, but I got to own him again. So I go back and I start. So these are just all vain words there's zero charity in what I'm saying. Like, oh, I delude myself to, oh, well, I'm correcting the sinner. I'm instructing the internet. That's the delusion, because you didn't talk with your brother respectfully. You didn't say, hey brother, I totally understand what you're saying. Like, you didn't talk like you would normally talk to an individual in the body. Like, somebody on the street said, hey bro, men can turn into women. You wouldn't like foam at the mouth at that guy. You'd actually say, you try to interact with him in a charitable way to try to, turn him towards the truth. But on the internet, you're just like, oh, so
exactly.
This is what I've done, and I know I'm totally guilty of it. I'm gonna have to answer to Jesus Christ. He's gonna say, what about all those things you said? And I mean, I can't remember all the things I've said. Like, so I'm terrified.
Exactly.
I'm trembling in judgment here. So I'm just saying, Lord, help me to repent and give back to the internet some sort of good for all the evil I've done on the internet.
Thank you.
Would you say that the cycle is, so yeah, you talked about that excitement, then there's that initial satisfaction of, yeah, I owned him, I owned that, as far as winning the argument. And then there's a period of ongoing like anxiousness or anxiety. You're going back to find what he said, or has he responded? What's his response going to be like? Because I want to respond to that. And then is there a loss of internal peace? It seems to me that is kind of the cycle. Is there's this excitement of the challenge, then there's this initial satisfaction, then there's this kind of lingering, ongoing anxiousness, and then there's a loss of kind of like an internal peace. Like, yeah, I might have owned him, but I don't own myself. I might have mastered that argument, but man, I have no self-mastery because I just unloaded on this guy. Is that fair? Would you say that that's kind of the stages?
Yeah.
Because I think what's at stake here, if that really is, so Jesus is clear. He's clear before Pilate, and he's also clear in, I think it's John 8, verse 23. In fact, it is there, I think, where the Jews are really pushing him because he's hinted around that he's definitely the Christ, but also that he's one with the Father. And then he just flat out says, you are of the world, and I am not of the world. And he's like, that's the distinction. You're below, I'm above. And so like, if we're to be with Christ, we have to seek the things that are above, as Paul says in Colossians, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Our life is hidden in Christ with the Father. It's not exposed, on the internet. And I think that the way you can tell is if you have that ongoing peace with Christ, knowing that you haven't bowed down to the world to prove yourself, as Satan tried to get Jesus in the desert, prove yourself. That's the world. That's the internet. Prove yourself. That doesn't bring peace. But it's the peace of knowing that I don't have to prove myself to any human being because I know that I'm a son of God. Therefore, I'm not of this world. That's the distinction for me, is that the telltale sign of all this is, do I have that ongoing peace and I'm not anxious about returning back to that vomit of the argument or that vomit of the posting or the vomit of the stats and the metrics? Is that, what do you guys think about that?
That's great. I love what you just said, because if there's, I think it's Dom Scapoli, Spiritual Combat. He talks about like when you have a disturbance in your heart, it means you're attached to creatures somehow. Like,
there you go.
If you like the collect for the ascension says that just as our Lord Jesus Christ ascended to heaven, may we also in heart and mind thither ascend and with him continually dwell. So we should be always, as St. Paul says, you should be dwelling with Christ in the highest at all times. That's where your heart should always be. And if you're with Christ in the heavens, you're always at peace. There's nothing that can faze you. So I really liked how you put that. And it's just incredibly important to check ourselves there. Yeah, go ahead.
It seems to me that there's like this distinction, right? Like on one hand, we are not to be concerned with the opinions of men, right? Because if opinions of men are what we're concerned about, then our identity is based on what they think of us. However, you get the guy who's kind of out here and he says, oh, I'm for God and I don't care what men think, and so I'm just going to bash the heck out of them, right? So there's this kind of interesting dynamic here. We are not to bow down to the opinions of men, but we are still to love them. Right? And that's where you find Christ. It's like right in that middle, in that tension where I'm not bashing the human being that I disagree with and crushing them with my verbal, 1, 2, but at the same time, I'm not looking to that human being for my validation, affirmation, identity. And there's the tension, because Christ is beautiful, or his example is so powerful, is that on one hand, he loves those who are debating and accusing him, and yet he doesn't feel like he has to prove himself in the least.
Yeah. It reminds me of St. Thomas has in his section in the Summa where he discusses fraternal correction. Because this is the justification we all make for why should I own somebody online, fraternal correction, right? Well, so Thomas says that he asked the question, if your fraternal correction makes that person worse, should you still do it? St. Thomas says, no, you actually should not fraternally correct someone if doing so makes him worse. And what does that point to? It points to the fact that we're trying to win hearts. That's what Christ is doing. He's winning their hearts by his own sacred heart. And so it's just not just about intellect, not just about the truth in your heart. It's about, truth in your intellect. It's about winning their hearts. And so you may win an argument and harden their hearts further. So what did you just do? You just deterred that. But I want to let me just say this as well. The internet has, like, part of my journey with the internet, my struggle with the internet had to do with the fact that as an Eastern Orthodox Christian, I made contact with somebody from another country who was Catholic who could answer all of my questions. And the Eastern Orthodox apologetic is kind of niche. It's like very technical, and it has this 1,000-year history. So it's like all this academic stuff that's like really a ton of, it's a huge rabbit hole. But this guy went into it with me, and we emailed for like 2 years. And it was because of him, a critical factor for me becoming Catholic. And what does this point to? It points to the fact that the internet has this great potential to connect people. Like right now, y'all are in, you're in Texas. Where are you at, Devin?
Right.
You're like Missouri.
Oh man, I'm in Iowa.
Missouri? Right. Iowa. Right, Iowa. Missouri, I thought it was somewhere around there in the middle. So like we're actually spanning the north and south of the United States right now. And that's great. Like we can have this friendship across these state borders. And that is what the internet can do as a positive. And that's a great thing. This is fantastic. But it starts with this peace of soul, like you're dwelling with Christ in mental prayer. You're far more committed to your prayer life than your social life online. You spend, so much more time in prayer than you do on a screen. And then you can actually use the screens as best you can to, for what good they can do.
So good.
Yeah. I think that there are a lot of people, and I'm one of them at times in the past, where we believe that we need to be right and prove that we're right because we say we're waving the banner, this is all for Christ. And yet, I think you said it, we are right in the wrong way. And there are going to be countless souls in hell who are great theologians, great academics, great debaters, but they were right in the wrong way because they lacked charity. And I think when you were talking about truth and charity and truth, that's kind of the two torches that become one, it's like truth and charity. And when one of the torches is missing, the light is like far less. And in fact, it might even become a false light because I can have the truth. Satan uses the truth all the time with a lack of charity, or he poses with love, that looks like charity without the truth. You know what I mean? And so I think like this idea, when you kind of had it broken down into four things. You had charity, truth, or three: charity, truth, community, right? And so like you were trying to build the community by revealing the truth, but the way to do that is with charity. If any of those three things are missing, then it's going to be divisive. I don't know. That's just my take on it.
Yeah. I mean, this is so. Actually, an Eastern Orthodox, a Greek Orthodox bishop wrote a book called "Being as Communion," as communion, because. And this is Joseph Ratzinger does this a lot. My friend Richard Decloux has a book called The Mind of Pope Benedict, A Theology of Communion. And that's why their journal was called Communio. But the reality is that the supreme being is communion. The supreme being is the Holy Trinity. Whereas Aristotle said the supreme being is an impersonal being. There was no personal God. And so we can get into as men, we can get into this abstraction where I'm so focused on the truth, but the truth is no longer a person. The truth is an idea. And then you've entered into a pagan philosophy now. You're now a pagan, in philosophically speaking. So if your truth is not a person and is not persons, the persons of the Blessed Trinity, then you've departed from the truth.
That's right.
Yeah, and then the way you react to it and fight for it is going to be much different than if you're fighting for a relationship or someone you relate to. Because if you relate to someone, you're accountable to them and you live like them. So Jesus is the the hinge of the relationship with us in the Trinity, right? The incarnate Word. And so we're accountable to him, and we want to relate to him, and therefore we're held accountable in the way we relate to others. And so, but if truth is abstract or impersonal, not abstract, but if it's impersonal and God is impersonal, then we're not held bound by any kind of accountability. And you might be touching on something very important here, because this could be fundamentally the problem, is that actually the way we argue on the internet, the way we are going out there and doing whatever we are in the social space as a negative, this could be the very revelation of the fact that we do not truly have a personal relationship with the interrelational Trinity, with God.
Yeah.
I really think that exposes it right there. I think that's very good.
Yeah. Timothy, so moving on, you had your second promise was, I will always accept and welcome correction. And there's a couple things in this, right? Not only will you accept, but you also welcome it, right? And I do believe, like, at its heart, the man of truth always wants truth to reign, in his heart. But there's definitely a certain humility that comes about that. You read from Proverbs, the way of life to him that observeth correction, but he that forsaketh reproofs goeth astray. So talk to us about the second promise that you made.
Yeah, it was just my own life. The only way that I ever made a step towards Catholicism was because somebody corrected me. It's like, oh man, I'm really glad that you pointed that error out to me. I didn't like it. I was really frustrated for a while with you. I was angry at you for like a year, but eventually I came around, and then I reflect. I was like, well, you know what? If I took a shortcut and stopped getting angry every time, I could actually like make more progress for the truth. So, so I was like, wow, this is just such a basic rule. And part of it was like, I remember there was a few times where I got fired from a job, but I was never told what I was doing wrong. And I was so frustrated, like, just tell me what I'm doing wrong so I can actually change that. And then I can, keep my job. But, people didn't want to, be confrontational or whatever. So I was just like, eventually, after many years of kicking and screaming, I just sort of realized, hey, like, I get so diluted with myself. I get so off base, and I really need people to correct me where I'm wrong. And when somebody does it, I'm like, oh, thank you so much. But that took about 15 years of
agreed. Yeah. I appreciate the honesty, right? Because it's 100% the reality of our lives as well. I want to invite you to join us inside of Catholic Gentlemen Plus. This is our exclusive membership just for men. We have well over 1,000 like-minded men in there, priests, religious seminarians, as well as just a lot of lay men that are getting together to understand what it means to be a man today. We have over 33 unique sessions dedicated to the struggles, the deeper understanding to our lives as men in its relationship with God, the world, and other people. It is really an incredible platform that we have loved bringing to all of the men. In addition, we came out with this Lenten series of Father Ken Geraci, and we've got a whole other set of series planned just for men inside of Catholic Gentlemen Plus. So it's a great way to support us. I'd love to see you in there. Head over to CatholicGentlemenPlus.com or click that link in the show notes. Join us inside. God bless. But it is so important for men to realize this. Not again, we want to carry that banner of truth without charity oftentimes, and we want everybody else, we want to force that truth, maybe for our own doubts and insecurities, but also for, like this higher ideal, this higher notion, this understanding, but at the same time, receiving it ourselves, being corrected ourselves, and like you just stated, a shortcut, right? There absolutely, our vices keep us from forward progress and from truly being instruments of grace for this world. So I appreciate all of that.
Yeah, and someone said this, always listen to your critics, because your critics there's an element of truth. Even if they're attacking your personality, even if they're you can listen to them and say, okay, what is it about me that's actually rubbing them the wrong way? Maybe there is something that's coming off prideful or presumptuous. I need to look at that. And I think that's where humility, the foundation of all the virtues, really grows, is when we're willing to take that and assess that and just not say, oh, they're just idiots, they're just stupid, I'm just going to go my own way. But I think the reason why it hurts when our critics accuse us, blame us, or whatever they do, criticize us, it's because we are too attached to our personal ideas. And that's when, like you were saying earlier, they become idols. And this is a great test right here as to whether or not we idolize our ideas is when the critic comes in and criticizes us, and we're like so protective of that idea. Exactly. That's when we know we've idolized it, you know?
Yeah, like when your peace is disturbed, like you said, if your peace is disturbed and somebody corrects you, but you were actually wrong, what does that say about your heart? You're actually attached to an idol that you're trying to get all your attachment, your satisfaction out of this idol rather than the real truth.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, just a little vignette. I don't want to go too far here, but I was in South Dakota. I was for an event, a men's conference, 2 talks, and I had to grab something to eat. And I went to this Irish pub, and the place is packed. And the guy said, "Hey, there's room at the bar there." So I went up to the bar, and there was this woman there who was trying to have a conversation with me, you know, and she'd obviously, I think, maybe had a little too much to drink already. And so I just kind of was trying to focus on eating my meal and not getting involved in talking with her. And at some point, she really pours it on. She really wants to talk. And we get into this situation where she starts talking about how she believes that God is the universe and the universe is against her. And I'm like, so God's impersonal? And I just start asking her questions. And then she's like, yeah, Jesus is a metaphor. The Bible's a metaphor, da, 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 da. And I am just like inside just wanting to like correct everything she's saying, just like come down. Yeah. But I'm trying so hard to listen. And finally she said something about, and it was a very stupid comment, but she said that the Bible came before, you know, the scriptures, the New Testament came before Jesus. And I'm like, how do you write about someone who hasn't even existed until afterwards, right? And that's when I ticked her off, right? So then she started using F-bombs and yelling at me and everything. And I realized, so what I did is I turned to her, I said, you know, she's saying how everybody's against her. I said, I might just be the one person who actually cares for your heart and wants your soul saved. And she just looked at me stunned. But I realized at that point I'd already blown it, because if I had done, so this is like being right in the wrong way. If I was just right in the charitable way, rather than trying to be right to say, look, you're wrong, maybe she would have listened to that comment and then we could have dialogued afterwards. But I blew it. I went too far.
That's a hard lesson. I mean, I've done that so many different times on the internet or in person. And that's the difficulty. Reading when you read the patristic commentaries, the Catena Aurea of St. Thomas Aquinas, where he just lists all the fathers and what they say about the Gospels, they're constantly saying, okay, Jesus said this, and the reason he said that was because he knew the heart of that person. And he said it in a way so that that person's heart would be open to the truth. So Jesus is always acting in this way to win everyone to himself. And so he's just living in their hearts, and he knows their hearts, you know, he knows their thoughts and everything. And we as men, for me personally, definitely, like women have emotional intelligence. Women have emotional intelligence. That's what they like. Men, especially me, I'm just so stupid when it comes to emotions and realities of like how people are feeling, what's going on, you know, like. But if I get the grace once in a while and I'm actually in tune with someone's heart in some way, then I can actually say something that would be helpful to them, like our Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, I just looking with 10 minutes left, I want to make sure that we move through. I've got, we don't have to hit all 3 of these 3 remaining promises. We can definitely put them into the show notes, but I do want to talk about number 5. I will never say anything profane or vulgar, as it is written. But now put you also all away, anger, indignation, malice, blasphemy, filthy speech out of your mouth. And it seems fitting with what we're talking about, right? They're all so connected with each other. So Timothy, when you were writing that one, what was the desired outcome?
Well, I guess there profanity and vulgarity, and there's differing languages and cultures, even in English, Anglophone in America, like you know, hanging out in certain places, people just F-bombs like it's nothing. So but I mean, I do think Christians should have a much higher standard than the world in the way we use language. I think that people should be, like that person just doesn't really use those words, and I think it's very unfortunate that Catholics think it's okay to use like kind of the PG swear words. Like to me, I think that's even too much. I mean, I just think that like, why do you need to? I mean, the word damn means to put someone in hell. That's what that means. Why do you need to use the word hell? Like hell's, there's no joking about hell, really. Like, why do you need to use that word? Like, is that really necessary? So in my opinion, I take a rather strict view of those things. But I know Catholics have different opinions on some of that stuff, but I just think it's the best way to bring a light to a dark place in the internet is just to refrain from any sort of thing like that. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't particularly disagree at all. I've had these fun dialogues around campfires about profane words that really degrade the human person. But at the same time, you have like St. Anthony Mary Claret, right, was able to hear the souls from hell, and one individual was there because he couldn't control his tongue and couldn't say a sentence without a cuss word, and it ultimately degraded his own dignity so much that he couldn't see through the lies that he had accepted and the way that he had been conditioned. And so I think it's important for us to really be strong in virtue in these matters, especially online when it's disembodied community, right? It's so much easier to argue in that way and use that language, which isn't converting anybody. But then again, it goes back to that pride of it doesn't really matter if I'm converting them as long as I'm winning. Really, that's the argument. And so we need to remove ourselves from that as much as possible. And being strict in these matters can allow us to become, I would say, even more virtuous men and lights to those who are in desperate need.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed, too, that when you refrain from being vulgar or using profanity, that other people who do, after a while, they notice and then they curb it and they apologize for it when they do it. And so it's like sometimes the absence of something actually becomes the greatest evangelist, So when we're not saying these things, that silence right there speaks profoundly of our reverence for God. And someone pointed this out to me. He's now deceased, but he said, notice that almost every profanity is related to either bodily functions, relationship. So you're a son of a, or you're a bastard, and then God, spiritual matters. So bodily functions, the F word, right? The S, all of that. It's all related. So what we're doing is actually we're attacking the body, which is godly and beautiful, meant to express the human person. We're attacking our relationships, which are familial and beautiful, or we're attacking God and the spiritual life.
Yeah, exactly. So Timothy, I want to give you a moment here. There's a couple things that we want to go through as we're winding down, but one is I want you to give us your last thoughts on a man's duty and responsibility in the digital space when it comes to proclaiming the truth, bringing Christ, the true light, into this false light, into this disembodied community. What is your encouragement and direction, really, for men? I'd love to give you the stage for that.
I don't know. I'm trying my best to figure it out myself. But I mean, it seems to me, if I can hazard something like that, just kind of what we've talked about before, like, is it really necessary for you to be on social media? Like, is it really that necessary? Make an examination of conscience. Is it really, this is preparing in Holy Week, yes, and we have our Lord's Passion, and we need to think about the fact that our sins, especially our sins of the tongue, like Jesus Christ was mocked. There were sins of the tongue against Jesus Christ, and our sins pierce his heart, and our sins pierce Our Lady's heart. And if we make an examination of conscience this Holy Week and do we really need to use this social media? Am I falling into these very subtle sins? Maybe I'm not, thanks be to God, maybe I'm not into pornography. Maybe I'm not falling into those obvious evils, but maybe there's more subtle evils that I'm falling into. So making an examination of conscience like that, maybe thinking about taking a much longer fast from, maybe you fasted some for Lent, maybe you need to take a year off. Maybe you do something more intense like that, because you don't want to lose your own soul, and you don't want to cause other people to harden their hearts more. So just really examine yourself and think about what is really necessary. There is only one thing necessary, which is the salvation of your own soul, and whatever you can do for those under you, those you're responsible for. It's a good examination of conscience is to ask your wife, like, am I like on my phone at home all the time? I'm just checking those notifications, like, or am I plugged into the reality? Like that's an easy examination of conscience right there. True. But so those are some thoughts. Maybe it's helpful.
Some good guardrails. Yeah, no, I'm really grateful, and it means a lot, Timothy. And so you've launched this incredible platform, Pelican Plus, with some of your friends and some great thinkers, both in the digital space and beyond. Take a moment and talk about Pelican Plus. Talk about how men or listeners here. I know we've got some women that listen in, and we're grateful there as well. So let us know how men can get engaged with Pelican Plus.
Yeah. So Pelican Plus, I mean, in my opinion, I firmly believe that 10, 20, 30 years from now, it'll just be a choice between the mark of the beast and something, or just get off the internet. Or you could use Pelican Plus, because Pelican Plus we're trying to actually create a system where the technology itself, because this is important. It's not just the infrastructure itself. With all the matrix itself, the thing itself is Catholic from top to bottom. That's the only way that we can create something long term, where it's like this whole thing is begun by Catholic social teaching from the very beginning. The technology itself functions like that. So what you get in your feed has nothing to do with an algorithm. It has to do with the fact that you're interacting with other human beings. That's what you're actually getting. So we want to actually create a structure, a digital infrastructure, which is totally Catholic through and through and through and through. And that's what we've done. And not because we're great, but because there's a lot of great people who have built this. There's a lot of people that have worked together. So we're using a cooperative business model. Like, let's all work together like any Catholic business, and let's follow Catholic social teaching in the way that we treat our employees, but also the entire structure of the thing. So Pelican Plus we want this to benefit all Catholics. We want to create an actual digital structure which is totally independent of big tech whatsoever. Totally independent. Yeah. There's nothing tied to big tech. And so we hope that it will become a Catholic alternative to Netflix, a Catholic alternative to Substack and Twitter and all these different things. So that people like I said, we can get connected with somebody. We can form a friendship with somebody who might be isolated. Like I mentioned, my friend in Sweden. I didn't even mention people who are in certain places that are persecuted. People in Mohammedan countries or CCP or whatever. They can have some access with the technology, and they can actually have a community. This is a great benefit. Or somebody's coming back to the faith. Maybe their entire family, their entire community in their local community is not Catholic, but then they make a connection with people online. So there's so much great good can come out of this, but we have to have a digital infrastructure which is totally Catholic, and we have that with Pelican Plus. So we want to share this with everyone, but here's the difficulty: is that we cannot build digital Christendom without actual building blocks, and that actually costs money. So exactly. It's like as soon as you start saying, "Oh, please give me money," oh, you're a grifter. But that's because you're not living in reality then.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. You live in virtual reality while everything's free. That's not the reality of the situation. So One of our partners is Mass of the Ages. Like Mass of the Ages is a trilogy about the Latin Mass, but it's so much more than that. Yeah. And the only reason this is happening is because people chip in to try to build it. It costs so much. It costs millions of dollars to make a movie. It costs millions of dollars. People, we can complain about the fact that Hollywood is Marxist or whatever, Disney's pushing this or that on your kids. But they actually spend millions of dollars to create a quality art project, even though it's degraded, but it's a quality piece of art in terms of its certain aesthetic values. But it literally costs millions of dollars to make a movie. So we have to actually chip in to make something beautiful. And just think about this. Our forefathers created the great cathedrals of Europe because they were willing to sacrifice even over generations. I mean, these cathedrals cost they spent 100 years to make. I poured all my work into this and I died before I was able to even see this thing done because I just want to sacrifice and make something good for the glory of God. And that's what we want to invite every Catholic into with Pelican Plus. We want to build something like this in the digital space that can really be a sacred space. Because we've separated the social part from the main platform. So you can just ignore. You don't even have to have any social media experience whatsoever. So you can just have this pure environment. We don't use any AI for the voices, like the articles. You pull up an article, you click play, and you can hear the author of the article read the article to you. Yeah. No AI voices, no ads, none of this stuff. We want to create something that's a pure content, a pure environment. So that's basically Pelican Plus.
I love it.
You can get a discount. You can use the discount code PLUS. You can get a 10% discount to join this movement against big tech. If you do that, you also get entered into a raffle. So you get a bunch of books from Kwasniewski Kennedy Hall that we're going to pull on Easter Monday. So. Great. You can use the discount code.
Click on that. Yeah, click on that. Head over to the description, the show notes here. Jump in there in Pelican Plus. Okay, we're at a point in the episode right here, putting on the new man, where we like to give a weekly challenge to our listeners. And so, Timothy, what is that weekly challenge that you are going to encourage men, knowing this is going out on Wednesday here, right before the Triduum? What's the challenge?
The only thing I could think of was... If this is on Wednesday, this is Spy Wednesday when Judas betrayed Christ. Right. And there's this passage in the Tenebrae service that traditionally would take place tonight on Wednesday. And Jesus Christ says in the Tenebrae service, he says to his disciples, he says, "You were sleeping while Judas was keeping vigil to betray me." Mm-hmm. And so here's my challenge is to begin a novena and ask the Lord, should I get off the internet? Should I radically change the way I'm living my life? And just open your heart to the will of God. Open your heart to his will so that you can do whatever he tells you. Mary's, Our Lady's last words in the gospel are do whatever he tells you. So pick a novena. Any novena will do. Our Lady's obviously the best ever. Amen. But so that's my challenge. Pick a novena, give yourself 9 days, give the Lord 9 days to act and speak to you and open your heart to his will on this crucial matter.
What an awesome challenge. I'm so grateful for that. Awesome. Yeah, I'll take it up myself. So thank you. So Timothy, what a blessing it has been to join us. Thank you for all your work in the digital space. Know that you'll be in our prayers. And again, just with a grateful heart, thank you.
Thank you for all y'all's good work, and we'll pray for each other.
Amen. And as we end each of our episodes,
be a man, be a saint.